What is it you want most? Wealth? Freedom? That final piece in your Furby collection? Imagine that thing you desire more than anything else. Now, how far are you willing to go to get it? What or whom would you sacrifice to the altar of obsession? How comfortable is the fact that you will yourself number among the lost in such pursuit? Saros is a game of punching, shooting, and vaporizing your way through an alien planet for wealth and lost love. At least on the surface. But as the player character Arjun Devraj's story develops, layers are peeled back to reveal themes of denial and regret, meditations on spiritual detachment and karmic rebirth, and how want can sink into the heart and pull one into an abyssal hell of their own making, a darkness that eclipses the light of the soul. A mining operation on a distant world for the most powerful resource ever discovered goes horribly awry when contact is lost with all three divisions of the Echelon Colony mission. The colony, owned by the mega-corporation Soltari, was tasked with drilling the substance leucinite, a sci-fi philosopher's stone of endless energy for humankind, and endless wealth for Soltari, from the seemingly uninhabited planet Carcosa. We play as Arjun Devraj, an enforcer with Echelon 4, a small task force held in emergency reserve that's dispatched to investigate then re-establish communication with the colony. His reason for joining Soltari is personal. Arjun's wife Nitya Chandran was part of the preliminary research team of Echelon 1. He travels across the stars and braves untold dangers to ensure Nitya's safety, guided by a talisman of the sun meant to symbolize their undying love for one another. From the very first step, Carcosa isn't what it appeared. It's dangerous and violent. The landscape shifts beneath the crew's feet. Alien creatures with writhing appendages and weird automatons that drag tendrils of wires as they drift attack Arjun with relentless volleys or swipes. And it's not uninhabited. Ruins of a past civilization rise towards the sky. A great fortress breaks the distant horizon. Ritual chambers adorned with gross, vaguely human shapes hint that an alien society once flourished here, but has since collapsed. Above this, something stranger and altogether more horrifying affects Carcosa. A force physically transforms the planet as it seeps into the minds of all. It's oppressive and searing, terrible in its beauty. Like a black hole, it draws everything caught into its center, where it crushes form and will. It's the Carcosan eclipse. An onyx globe hangs menacing in the sky, always close to Carcosa's sun, always threatening to engulf the star. Its influence is felt immediately when a member of Echelon 4 sabotages their ship and turns on the crew, his mind completely enthralled by some alien force. The more time Arjun spends on Carcosa, the more logs and entries he uncovers from previous Echelon missions, the more examples he finds of madness caused by the eclipse. Most unsettling is Soltari scanners picked up no other celestial bodies. Carcosa doesn't have a moon. So what is this object that heralds the eclipse? The Yellow Shore is the antagonist of Saros, responsible for the planet's transformation and the fate of all Echelon missions. Like all cosmic horror beings, it's an entity difficult to comprehend. The Yellow Shore, or the Eclipse entity, is described as a god, a location, an aura. It is at times the eclipse itself. At other times, it's what lies behind the eclipse. The realm itself, which Arjun eventually reaches, is separated from space and time, unbeholden to reality. Only briefly do we see the entity's physical form, when gargantuan tentacles encroach from the edges of view and expand from beyond the eclipse. But what's most critical to the narrative is how the Yellow Shore manifests, how it uses an individual's deepest thought to trap them in an illusion of golden desire that leads ultimately to oblivion.
You are so close now.
Hold on for me. I will find you.
What you want, what you need. This is the aria of the eclipse. It lures with sweet promises, then seizes the soul, kind of like those nasty, sticky traps for bugs. The Yellow Shore feeds off human emotional turmoil. The strong feeling of desire is like nectar, and it manipulates to stoke that sense of need in its victims. As Arjun uncovers Carcosa's secrets, he finds countless members of the Echelon colony that succumb to the Yellow Shore. And Arjun isn't immune.
I've been waiting so long.
Nitya, I'm here.
His greatest desire is to reunite with Nitya, and he's constantly driven by whispers of her in danger, begging him to find her, urging him on. This isn't the real Nitya, a lie conjured by the eclipse. In fact, the game begins midway through one of Arjun's treks. So blinded by his need for Nitya, we're left to wonder how he got here and how many times he's attempted this. So, that Furby from before, that thing you wanted most, how did you feel once you got it? Probably pretty great, triumphant for a while. But over time, that achievement cools, that trophy loses its luster, that Furby gathers dust, and you look for something else to desire. It's not your fault. The human mind is phenomenal at adapting and protecting its psyche in something called the hedonic treadmill. We tend to return to a stable level of happiness and satisfaction despite life events and changes. We get a raise at work, so we spend more. Then we feel like we need another raise. We're always on the treadmill. What we want tantalizingly close, but just out of reach. It's this combination of desire unfulfilled and want unconstrained we see played out in Saros. Carcosa, the eclipse, the stories of the Echelon missions are all symbols of the danger of human sensuality and the hollowness of desire. Want becomes the shackles with which the Yellow Shore binds. It fills people with ceaseless hunger, ambition, greed, plays on those human weaknesses as it pulls them into the all-encompassing eclipse. And the eclipse itself is a great manifestation of humanity's capability for evil. That darkness dwells in every heart and threatens through such emotions to extinguish any light or hope. The depths of depravity are exemplified in the tragedies of the Echelon missions that Arjun slowly pieces together.
It's the two. Echelon 2. What happened?
It takes rampaging through several beast-infested biomes, smashing through gears of mechs before we catch a first glimpse of them, Carcosa's ancient civilization. With multiple limbs, flayed skin, grossly disproportionate bodies, these creatures are sentient and humanoid. The builders and laborers of the kingdom that now lies in ruin, with evidence of a brutal, bloody downfall. Cries of anguish and devotion escape their lips. Their forms betray terrible suffering. A nightmare made more terrible with the revelation that these monsters were once human. Time works in strange ways on Carcosa. What passes for months away is centuries, lifetimes on the surface. Each Echelon mission followed its predecessor by what was intended as a short span, but ended up dilated to Carcosan generations. Time enough for the Yellow Shore to work bizarre transformation. The creatures that stop Arjun from reaching the Soltari colony aren't aliens. They are the Soltari colony. What remains of the Echelon teams twisted into vile mockeries of their past humanity. Each Echelon mission holds within it a parable of human folly. Echelon 1, the first team to reach Carcosa, of which Nitya Chandran was a part, was a small crew made to map and understand the planet to prepare for large-scale leucinite mining. They were the first blessed by the Yellow Shore. Prophet, architect, shepherd, king, the great bosses Arjun must confront are the members of Echelon 1. Theirs is a story on the darkness of the human heart. Given eldritch power by the Yellow Shore, Echelon 1 was led by their commander Delroy to godhood. They believed themselves masters of the planet. They could shape the landscape and impose their will. They transcended humanity and flew to the seat of divinity. Their thirst was unquenchable. The Yellow Shore turned them into reservoirs of ceaseless want. A rapacious emptiness, self-propagating. Echelon 1's physical transformation is symbolic of the inhuman atrocity they committed after lust consumed them. Echelon 2 was meant as the bulk of the colony, thousands of workers and administrators intended to establish leucinite mines. Instead, they found themselves willful slaves. Echelon 1 wished to rule as gods, but they needed servants, and so subjugated Echelon 2 and forced them into labor camps of death. They killed thousands. Thousands more they turned into the creatures we fight. Enemies like the Promise, Aurelia, and Vessel, whose names correspond with the great lies told to them by the gods of Echelon 1. Their hands built the great cathedrals, fortresses, and towers of Carcosa. Their broken bodies chattel for their overlords. What strikes me as most tragic is that no rebellion or opposition came from the two. So awestruck by the power and majesty of Echelon 1 were they, that they accepted their lot as slaves for the faintest hope of a sliver of Echelon 1's glory. Their fate is symbolic of envy and blind obedience. It demonstrates what people are willing to give up and do to one another for a taste of godhood. The Yellow Shore stoked want and need until both Echelon 1 and 2 were transformed by their desire beyond human recognition. Greed, envy, ambition, not traits that rouse companionship. We learn a great war was fought between Echelon 1, each commanding armies of loyal followers. Each god desired a throne that could only accommodate one. King Delroy defeated each of his opponents until the kingdom was a charred ruin, his throne of gold a prison, his jealousy and paranoia isolating him. Completely enthralled by the eclipse, Delroy retreated to the Yellow Shore, the metaphorical heart of darkness, an emotional abyss so deep he had no hope of ever becoming human again. Delroy cherished and hated his throne. The eclipse now blazed on his chest. The king sat alone in his black hole of greed. By the time Echelon 3 arrives, the civilization has collapsed. The gods rest in slumber, but the eclipse entity still works its influence. Whereas the crew of 2 could witness their gods, see and feel their power firsthand, Echelon 3 was reduced to creating their own religion without observable deities. As their minds began to alter and obsessions took root, the crew divided into 2 factions. One worshipped the Yellow Shore. The other believed in a different entity called the Blue Precipice, a place of depression and melancholy, but one that dispels desire and offers clarity. And, as has sadly been seen multiple times in the past, 2 faiths reconcile their differences through bloodshed. Echelon 3 tear themselves apart, murder and betray their friends in service to gods of their own invention, fabricated by yellow whispers. It's with Echelon 4 that we experience the descent into madness firsthand. Each person is unique, ruled by different obsessions, controlled by different fears, and so is their fall. Sheridan is spurred by a need to prove herself and assert authority. She begins to see disloyalty everywhere. Stack's obsession turns towards poetry and art, the subject always Yellow Shore. Power and wealth lure other members of Echelon 4 away from the safety of the passage. And with Arjun specifically, as the player character, we see how Carcosa and the Eclipse shape themselves to suit the individual. The desire is personal, a harpoon through the heart that drags them each towards an individual abyss. As Arjun shoots his way past countless waves of Carcosan monsters across the ruins of the ancient civilization, he's pulled constantly by the disembodied calls of Nitya, pulled by his obsession to reclaim her. Now, I say pulled because Arjun isn't the decision maker. He's a passive object tugged by an external force. His obsession has taken the reins from Arjun, and it brings us to an interesting thought. Desire and fear are often two sides of the same coin. We desire certain things primarily because we fear the opposite. Do I want that raise because I love the feel of crisp bills in my hand, or because I'm afraid of losing my home? Is Arjun chasing ghosts on a cosmic horror-stricken world because he desires Nitya's love and safety? Or because he's afraid of what he is without her, afraid that he meant nothing to her? This is a banyan tree. With deep roots cracking the alien floor and a vibrant canopy extending upward, its presence in the passage is inexplicable. The banyan is a symbol of sacred immortality and the interconnectedness of all things in several South Asian cultures and religions. Used as support and shelter during meditations or spiritual sermons, the banyan has come to represent reflection and self-awareness. That symbolism becomes practical as the banyan's trunk opens for Arjun to walk through memories of his past. And we're quickly struck by the fact Arjun isn't that great of a guy. His struggles with alcohol abuse strained Arjun's marriage with Nitya. Then, rumors of infidelity destroyed it completely. Worse still, Arjun's friend and colleague Sebastian Torres was fatally caught in this web. I'll admit it's hazy, perhaps because Arjun wants so bad to forget. But the vision suggests Sebastian worried Arjun's behavior was dangerously self-destructive and threatened to tell Nitya of his affair if he didn't end it. An argument broke out into a fight, and the next moment Sebastian was pushed from a window, killed for his concern over his friend. It was the final log on the fire. The couple's marriage burned entirely, and Nitya left him in its smoldering remains to find new life and purpose on the Echelon mission. The tree and Sebastian are illusions, conjured into Arjun's mind to stimulate self-reflection, opportunities Arjun is blinded to by his current obsession. But the tree will be the hook to pull Devraj from his personal hell. On Carcosa, Arjun's been blessed, or perhaps cursed is a better word, with a unique trait. Death isn't the end. After every fall into a bottomless chasm, throttling by a crazed beast, or vaporization by an energy beam, Arjun is slowly, painfully reconstituted from a pool of goo and emerges back in the passage. Its purpose and powers aren't at first apparent, but later Arjun discovers that the Preserver was constructed by his estranged wife. Chandran was the only member of Echelon who eventually liberated herself from the Yellow Shore and built this device to preserve her should she stray too far back into its enthrallment. The device is a means for Saros to employ its roguelike elements between runs, but it also carries moral and philosophical weight. It's no secret Saros takes inspiration from Hindu and Buddhist religious mytho-history. The names of its characters, the multi-armed appearances of the Carcosan deities, the banyan tree, among other allusions. Most significant is the concept of samsara, the beginningless cycle of aimless drifting, of wandering through mundane existence, and of perpetual suffering. Samsara is connected to the fundamental belief that all life is cyclical, endless rounds of birth and rebirth as the soul roams. And all existence is suffering, a notion Arjun becomes quite familiar with on Carcosa. The goal of the eternal soul is to liberate itself from samsara through the karmic theory of action and consequence, to endure successive reincarnations, honing itself through wisdom and good deed until it ultimately reaches nirvana, an end to samsara's wandering. Carcosa has trapped Arjun in his own cycle of death and rebirth, a nightmarish samsara which sees him endure countless pains and fatalities, to be reconstituted from the preserver. His flesh is new, but his soul remains. What shackles most to the eternal wheel is human ignorance and craving. There is a clinging to desire, an enslavement to want that prevents the liberating detachment necessary to reach enlightenment. The Yellow Shore is this Hindu and Buddhist concept made manifest. It's the pull of want, the allure of desire that traps Arjun. He clings too tightly to his past, can't claim responsibility for his actions, and therefore can't release his burden, and so the Yellow Shore has made him a slave to it. What Arjun believes is the path to reuniting with Nitya is in truth the path towards the Yellow Shore. Each time he dies, the Preserver gives him a second chance, an opportunity to walk away from this path, but Arjun's willful blindness keeps him locked. There's a physical metaphor to Devraj's struggle through the Carcosan biomes. He follows the route of the Echelon II slaves, beginning in the peaks of Shattered Rise, where the majesty of the gods can be seen for miles. The path then takes a slow, inexorable descent through the mines and labor camps of ancient depths, the shadowed and dangerous outcroppings of Shattered Descent, then finally to the fetid rot of the Blighted Marsh. Each step in this downward spiral, designed with purpose by the gods of Echelon 1 to make their subjects feel small, to remind them they belong in the dirt and muck, that they're nothing. Only those who have been chosen can continue. The darkness gives way to a swift, disorienting rise to the peak of grandeur where one is overwhelmed by the horrifying mouth of the eclipse. Thus broken, the newly anointed acolytes worship on the shore of their haven, bright in comparison to the thickets of the marsh, separated by a massive black dam. Across the waves, an isolated cathedral echoes with the subtle superiority of the Carcosan gods. Its hallways demand supplication. Its bells drown out thought. Here, the pilgrims likely underwent their gruesome transformation from human to something else. Here, the allure of desire and the lying whispers of power finally consumed them. From beginning to end, Carcosa's landscape is intended to assert dominance over the individual, to cower one into submission, and to stir envy and want in every soul until they're fed to the rapacious hunger of Yellow Shore. Mentioned, worshipped, feared. It's not until the end of Arjun's journey that we finally reach the Yellow Shore. This inscrutable pocket dimension exists either in the eclipse itself or some other realm made by the cosmic being responsible for it. Regardless, the shore shapes itself to Arjun's individual desire and doubt. We see images of Nitya hewn from stone, and it's in a still pool beneath a low-hanging and full eclipse that Arjun's final obstacle, the king, sits on his throne. The king is an interesting study. His radiant crown is that of a sun, made from gold as symbol of his divinity. Multiple pairs of arms denote omnipresent power. But most interesting is that his chest, where the king's heart and soul should rest, is only a gaping hole, the fathomless abyss of the eclipse. This is a great metaphor that illustrates precisely what befalls those who abandon themselves completely to desire. The king is a cautionary tale. He wanted everything, and in the end, he has nothing. He's a hollow vessel, transformed and cored by his ceaseless want, heightened by the eclipse. The king's throne demonstrates not the pinnacle of rule, but the depths of enslavement, a prisoner to his own vices. It's reminiscent of the golden touch of King Midas in Greek myth. So Midas, king of Lydia, swelled at first with pride when he found he could transform everything he touched to gold. But when he beheld his food grow rigid and his drink harden into golden ice, then he understood that this gift was a bane, and in his loathing for gold, cursed his prayer. In Midas and the King, there's a warning that wishes can become curses filled with unforeseen consequences, deep regret. It's fitting, too, that the king's crown should represent the sun. As with the Carcosan sun, no matter how bright he shines or how great his achievements, his light will always be darkened by the want of the eclipse. An epic fight beneath the cosmic eye sees Arjun victorious, his own desire and obsession finally come to fruition. Or will it? As with those before him, Arjun was deceived by the yellow shore, enthralled by his want. A vision shows us how his own psyche is replaced by the presence of the eclipse entity, how his body's twisted and his mind bent until Arjun becomes a new king, just another in a long succession of those bound to the throne of desire. The illusory image of Nitya by his side, enough to placate Arjun, as he now has eternity to despise himself. The game's twist ending, and the greatest nightmare of all, is that Arjun is doomed to repeat this journey, doomed to suffer eldritch transformation over and over and over. Defeating the king isn't victory, it's a turning of the wheel. Devraj is bound to the yellow shore and fated to samsara-like cycles of rebirth. There's only one way to deliver himself from this misery, a mixture of acceptance and release. Arjun's obsession to win back his wife pulled him into the eclipse's gravity well of desire. Deafened by want and need, he lost himself. Devraj holds to the past, or his own vision of it, so tightly his hands bleed, and he's still left hollow. To release Nitya and the past allows Arjun to face the future. Relinquishing human obsession frees him from the yellow shore. But this goes hand in hand with acceptance brought by revelation. Arjun was devastated by both Sebastian's death and his failed marriage, but refused to accept any responsibility. Devraj buried the trauma of accidentally causing such a close friend's death, and he denied Nitya no longer needed him. So blind was he to this that Arjun traveled literal light years to gather the pieces of a broken marriage. It's painful, but necessary for his character growth, to learn that Nitya found new love with fellow crew member Kira. Nitya is Arjun's foil. Beholden to no past and no denial, she finds growth and connection. It's enough to shatter Arjun's preconceptions, to force acceptance. When the blind is removed, Arjun confronts his greatest denial of all, the moments of Sebastian's death. A final symbol of Devraj's character arc is that he confronts the version of himself who succumbed to desire. He fights his past self as the king in yellow, and rather than accept the crown of suffering, finds solace in release. Why Arjun begins transforming under the eclipse is that he still held a thread of hope to rebuild his past with Nitya. But his sun is not forever. Throwing his talisman into the sea is Arjun casting off the last vestige of desire, and only then is he shielded from the yellow shore. In the final moments, we see flashes of blue and red light up Arjun's face, the same as those from the police lights in the vision of the night of Sebastian's death. It's left ambiguous on purpose. We're left to wonder whether all this was simply in Arjun's head, the journey through Carcosa and the events of Saros, an imagination of a man's internal struggle to let go and become better. Personally, I don't think this is the case, as both the Eclipse entity and the Blue Precipice are forces that can shape reality. I think instead, it's meant to symbolize Arjun's new desire to confront his past and make amends. Saros shows us the hell through which people are pulled when they become victims of their passions, and the great struggle both internal and external necessary to emerge from the abyss of pain stronger than ever. Thanks so much for watching this literary analysis of Saros. Let me know what themes you found most impactful and your thoughts on Arjun's story. I'll see you in the next one.